Commanders are really busy with free agency. They've had let no time escape under their feet, bringing in a lot of guys. I think it's about 15 or so. And joining me to talk about all the turns for this Washington Commanders team as they start free agency is former NFL player who played all with the Washington Commanders, Washington Redskins at the time, Anthony Armstrong. And Anthony, welcome again. I know that you've been listening closely to what the Commanders are doing with free agency. So let's jump right into this. Welcome to In the Minute. You got me by yourself today. No Tony.
Yeah, I know it, right? We
Yeah,
can we can talk some now. Tony, get
yeah,
out the
we can
way,
talk some
man.
because Tony always talking, always bringing in this stuff about the defense. But we're going to talk about the whole shebang of what this Washington Commanders team is doing right now. Because as I said, Adam Peters and that group, and I like that group because they've been really active in free agency, in getting ready for the draft in later in April. So jump in. First of all, I want to talk about the 2020 draft class on this Commanders roster right now. Can you believe that it is no one on this roster anymore? Does that surprise you?
With the way that the league works, Donna, it doesn't. And it's one side of it is it talks to how the previous the group was bringing in players. Maybe the scouting wasn't as good, and those players really didn't translate well to what was going on. And whenever you're changing, new ownership, new GM, new head coach, sometimes you got to cut those ties. So Adam Peters is making it happen. There's nobody from 2020. That's quick. That is very quick, but that's the way the league goes. You got to move on quickly.
And speaking about moving on, earlier during the last week when we were interviewing some other guys that had been signed by the Washington Commanders, is that we found out coming across the wire that Sam Howell would no longer be Washington Commanders. And what do you look at as far as look at when they say that Sam Howell is not going to be the quarterback? You would look at management and Adam Peters. They moved quickly on that because basically what that was saying to me is that we knew that he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback, but also they didn't even want him to be the backup quarterback in moving him along to Seattle. And all they did was swap places as far as the draft in moving past him. So were you surprised about that they hadn't gotten rid of him earlier, or that they didn't even project him to be the starting, well, not a starting quarterback, but a backup quarterback? What surprised you most about that move last week with the Commanders?
The only thing that surprised me about it was honestly nothing. Nothing surprised me because you look at the way that things have been in Washington for the past however many years. The backup quarterback has been the most favorite player of all the fans in the stands. They've been yelling, "Get Heineke in there, or get this other guy in there, or put this other guy back in there." Now they're saying, "Hey, you're sitting at 2. You're probably going to draft a quarterback. This guy is going to be the starter, and you have a vet behind him in Marcus Mariota." That's what the game plan is going to be. Everything is going to be to support this young player who's going to be able to lead this franchise. And nothing against Sam, but all you were going to have was a distraction because there was going to be some buzz that says, "Oh, well, should Sam Howell get a chance?" Or, how many times are they going to let this rookie do this before they go back to Sam Howell? And DC media loves to stir up some mess. They love to make it messy a little bit, and that's all that was going to that was
Never
going to
would I
be.
do that. Never would I do that.
I didn't say you. I didn't say
I'm just
you.
messing. I'm just
But
messing, but I know I
it's
would.
out there.
But you know what? You talked about Marcus Mariota, them bringing him in as a veteran quarterback. And when you look at his 9 years in the NFL, he hasn't really been a quality starting quarterback. I haven't seen anything much from him. And I'm not for sure if I would have picked him as my backup veteran quarterback, because really, what has he done as a quarterback for the 9 years he's been in here? I know they wanted to bring a veteran in, but was it somebody out there better that they could have brought in? Because we know how quarterbacks get hurt, and then you got a young quarterback that they probably will draft. Was he the right guy in your book?
The way that every signing has made some sense with having a connection to a coach or connection to somebody that's recently been brought to this organization. So when you look at Brian Johnson, the assistant head coach coming over from Philly, that's where Marcus Mariota was last year. So that familiarity is going to be helpful. And I think Marcus is a guy that understands, hey, I'm the backup. I'm here to help this other guy get better. I'm here to mentor. And one thing to consider, he was the second overall pick as well back in 2015. So you're going to have something immediately in common with this young kid that's getting drafted that you're going to say, hey, I've been in your shoes. I understand the pressure that you're under, but I'm here to help you out. So the more that you can get, I'm sure there may have been a better player stats wise, but he started for multiple teams throughout this league, a variety of levels of success. And he'll be a good communicator. And I think that you're going to get a good teammate, a good mentor of sorts, somebody that's going to not put too much pressure and make the rookie look over his shoulder, but somebody that's going to at least be able to help boost him up and relay information from the OC and the head coach down to him.
Hey, Anthony, I like what she said because when you look at the players that this Commanders group is bringing in, most of them are signed for 1 year. And most of them, like you said, when you pointed out that they've had connections with one of the coaches, I call it an all-star coaching group that they brought in here, getting the opportunity to interview them. And what they put in place is that they don't want to start from scratch. They want to be able to hit the ground running with these players and coaches that they picked up. So let's stick with the quarterback situation right now, knowing that you probably are going to get a quarterback in the draft. Between the quarterbacks that's out there, the names that are being thrown around, which one do you think fits better with this Commanders group in moving them along? If you were picking one of the other guys, if Williams is not there, who better fits, and who do you think would be a better quarterback between the two guys, LSU or North Carolina?
Man, I tell you, I'm so superstitious in a bit, in a sense. I don't want to go back down the UNC road right now, right? I don't want to go down to the Tar Heel road, none of that, Tobacco Road, whatever that is down there. I don't want to go back. And
we don't want to be smoking that
yeah, it's multiple reasons. I mean, one, Sam Howell went there. Not saying he's a bad quarterback, but you just got a guy from that program, and now you want to consider drafting another one. If you're not picking it up, I say go Jaden Daniels out of LSU. But you look at Ben Johnson; he went to UNC. Don't really bring his name up around Washington fans. Then you look at Mitch Trubisky, recent history in the NFL. He went to UNC, and I'm not saying Drake May is a Mitchell Trubisky, but something just says I don't necessarily want to go back down that road. You get yourself a Heisman Trophy winner. You get your guy that has very few interceptions in college, a lot of production while he was there at LSU. It makes some sense. I think that makes more sense. And frankly, you're going to dodge the extra circus that could come from having the hometown kid come back home. Not saying Caleb's a bad guy. I don't know him personally, but you can imagine hometown kid coming back to the city, leading his hometown team. That's a lot of that's a lot of noise. That's a lot going on. And frankly, you look back, you had that 10 years ago, right? You had a lot of noise at that spot. So now maybe you build a team, you let a guy come in who's going to be a quiet leader, and doesn't have to put everything on his shoulders, but can rely on the people around him.
And like you said, Jalen Daniels, when you look at his credentials across the board, as far as his arm strength, as far as his progression growth as a quarterback already, to me, that's the way to go, quarterback wise. But let's trickle on a little bit. When you look at a lot of the people that have signed with other teams that the Commanders did not sign back, Antonio Gibson was one that they didn't even consider signing back. We met the new guy this morning as far as Austin Ekeler from the Chargers. So let's talk about the running back position right now because he comes in with great credentials. Another one has relationships with the coaches. And you got Brian Robinson and you got Chris Rodriguez, who you signed last year, headed into his second year. When you look at the backfield now with those guys, and Austin said some great things as far as, having to prove himself over and over again, and the work that he had to put in proving himself as a great running back. And you look at his credentials as far as with the Chargers, maybe not a solid year last year, but when you look across the board over 8,000 and some yards, looking at the backfield, what do you see right there with that group? Are they set or do they need to sign another guy?
I don't think that they're going to avoid drafting maybe another young running back later on in some of those later rounds, but I think you could roll out here with these being your top three guys, right? You have a bruiser in Rodriguez. You got Brian Robinson, he's showing that he can do it all. But then Austin Ekeler is going to be able to be utilized in this Cliff Kingsbury offense in a very strategic way. I mean, he led the league in touchdowns, receiving and rushing. He's had plenty of touchdowns over the past few seasons, way more than any Washington running back has had. Sure, he had a down season last year. A lot of folks point that towards Kellen Moore and just the play call style that doesn't really feature those running backs. So what I see with that Austin Ekeler signing is, number one, a very smart veteran that you can add to a young running back room. Somebody's going to show these guys how to work and how to grow and improve. I think about third downs. When you have a young quarterback, having somebody in the backfield that's next to him, trying to help identify the mic and clarify who's rushing and who's going to blitz, having that savvy vet who's going to know how to pick up the blitz in Austin Ekeler is key. Being able to slip him out on screens and checking the ball down to him quickly is key. If Daniels is quick to process some things, he'll see, hey, maybe I can't get through my progression on the front side, but I got Austin Ekeler off to my left, and that's always a good thing to do. So to me, it's a very smart signing. I think the running back room is probably set. Definitely going to have some other young bodies when you get closer to the training camp and the season, but outside of that, these are your top three.
Hey, Anthony, I like how you slid in the quarterback just now. Just you already put him there, Daniels, in there.
Yeah.
Of him getting the ball out quicker. The thing that makes Austin Ekeler so great too is that Kingsbury's offense is the backs catching the ball out of the backfield.
Yep.
So when you think about Brian Robinson perfected that a little bit more last year in his skill set. Chris Rodriguez didn't get as many looks, but I'm sure they're going to use him a lot more. But all three of these guys, Ekeler talked about a two-man backfield. That's what he's used to. Like you said, they should be set in that position. But when you look at the wide receiver position, now that Curtis Samuel has moved on to Buffalo, probably his best year as Commander was last year. And you got Terry McLaurin, you got De'Ami Brown,
Jahan over there
and you
too.
got all of them. But are you satisfied? Does that, satisfy your taste buds? Because I'm still missing that big key guy, that as a receiver that the Commanders really, I don't think, have right now. What's your take on the wide receiver position since you played it?
Yeah, since I played it, I think they have a spot for one more. It's not me. I'm not lining back up, Donna, but
Don't
I
even
think
think about
I
it.
think they could get some. They could get some size. They need to get a little bit of height out there. So I wouldn't be surprised if they, try to make a play at some taller, bigger receiver. Keon Coleman comes to mind. Xavier Legette out of South Carolina is another guy who's an absolute specimen. Now, is Washington willing to pay the price to try to get those guys? Because they're probably going to be first rounders, right? They're going to be first rounders. I mean, another guy that comes to name, even though he's not as big, but he's very fast, is Xavier Worthy, right? Having somebody who can really stretch the field vertically is going to do nothing but open up everything underneath. So, do you want to make a play for that third receiver, or do you want to make a play at a tight end? So, I feel like that's going to be the battle to pay attention to. I do like that. I do see Washington getting a receiver in this draft, but I think tight end may be something to pay more attention to.
Hey, Anthony, you know what? They could move up in the draft also because they have so many picks that they are set as far as this draft to move up and give away some of their picks. And possibly Marvin Harrison Jr. would be, I don't know, he's going to be on the board if they could move up that much, but if they could get their quarterback, if they could get a Harrison, wouldn't we be like biting at the chops and be happy here in Washington? But we know that probably won't happen. But you mentioned the tight end position, although the Commanders signed Zach Ertz. He's another familiar guy with some of the coaches. But when you look at the tight end position, getting rid of Logan Thomas, not signing him back, you still have John Bates, who has not materialized into the tight end that they projected him to be when they drafted him some years back. Coach Turner, he was hurt part of last season. And then Amani Rogers, who showed some flashes was hurt with that Achilles injury. So when you look at those guys that you've got right now, I'm with you. You still need a big time tight end. But if you don't get a tight end, could you go with these guys that's on the roster, or tight end is a must in this Commanders offense?
Man, I would be remiss if you just felt like you were to roll that crew out. No offense to him, but I just think that whenever Cole Turner, Amani Rogers, those guys are more, receiver. Cole Turner was a receiver primarily,
Mm-hmm.
and he's learning that tight end position, and so having Zach Ertz is going to be beneficial. Armani Rogers, I want to say, played basketball. He was in
Yeah,
a
he
different
was
sport,
too.
right?
Yeah.
So he's learning. They're learning the position at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
It would be helpful to have somebody that comes in. I have my eyes on Brock Bowers is the top tight end in the draft, but then
I
a
want
guy,
him. I want him.
you try to get him. Now he never know. A tight end could probably fall down to the late 20s, and you see Washington package up a couple of those twos and a three or something and jump up to try to go snag that tight end. But if you can't get Bowers, you can look at Jatavian Sanders, tight end out of University of Texas. He was an absolute beast in high school, and he continued to be pretty productive in college as well. So he has an athletic skill set that I think could benefit from a Cliff Kingsbury offense. Right now, I think he'll give Washington fans a Jordan Reed vibe when you see him play. So that's a guy who had a hell of a career in Washington. It was all too short due to concussions, but I think that you can pay attention and see, maybe in the second round, third round, try to grab a tight end that somebody can come in there and be another weapon for that offense.
Well, you know what? We talked about the offense side of the ball, but let's switch gears over into the defense, because I want to jump to talking about the linebacker position. This is one of the positions that was the weakest link on this team, and now you're talking about maybe one of the strongest ones with bringing Bobby Wagner over, and then also Frankie Hulu. What is it? Hulu?
Luvu, Frankie
Luvu.
Luvu.
Frankie Luvu over there. So when you think about adding those two guys, and I still think you still need to add another linebacker, how do you see that linebacker core right now? And also the cornerback position, that I think that they've got to get stronger there. They lost Kendall
Kendall Fuller,
Fuller.
yeah.
And then, as far as safety, they lost
Cam
Cam
Curl.
Curl. So when you look at the linebacker position, talk to me how you see that right now, and also the cornerback position.
Yeah, linebacker definitely a weak spot over the past few years, and it very smart signing. Very smart signing. I think the Frankie Luvu signing is under the radar. The guy was absolutely crazy, crazy productive for Carolina. He gets after the passer. He's a good rush linebacker, so you're going to get some pressure from that position there. And he was also very good in pass defense. We know that pass defense was a weak spot coming into really all last season, past couple seasons for that linebacking core. So having an athletic player like Frankie Lavu is going to be key, but then also having, once again, a veteran, a guy who has done it, and a guy who can lead an entire defense. I've been calling for this, that the defense needed somebody who was going to close the door when the coach left and say, hey, what's up? Let's get this thing fixed. And Bobby Wagner's that guy. Anybody that's on that defense or frankly on that team that can't follow him probably don't need to be around much longer, because he's done it all in this league. He played linebacker for Dan Quinn back in the Legion of Boom. I know most of these guys on the team were about 14, 15 when that happened, but it was a really good defense.
Everybody remembers that.
Yeah, you got to remember that. But it was a really good defense. Bobby Wagner, though he's getting up there in age, is still a very good linebacker. He had 183 tackles last year, so he's still able to get after people. I think that's going to help Jamin Davis play faster and be more decisive. I see him having a slight increase in his production as well. But anytime they're bringing in the right people. They're bringing in the right people, so now you have your captain of that defense, because you lost one. You lost Cam Curl. And I know I posted on X that I was patiently waiting for Cam Curl to return, and people were saying, I don't think he's coming back, dog. I was like, well, let me wait then. Let me be patient about it. But he heads out to L.A. So
Yeah.
you lose that safety, but you had signed Jeremy Chin. So, that safety position – the safety position is a tough one, right? He's an impactful player, but doesn't make that much of an impact on the field or on the game. Some of the best do. You think of Micah Fitzpatrick, some of those guys get their hands on footballs. I think Cam was a great leader. Maybe the statistical output wasn't what they were looking for. But the guy that does hurt to lose is Kendall Fuller. because you have yet to see a replacement come in there. Is it, try to go get an Xavier Howard? Is that something that you try to do? Who knows? Right now, you're looking at Emmanuel Forbes, St. Juice, and a lot of the other young fellows that have been drafted in previous seasons.
Yeah.
You brought back Jeremy Reeves, but I think that you're going to see that that's got to be a position that they're either going to draft somebody, or there's going to be some movement to bring in a veteran at that cornerback position, because it's like you almost got it. You almost got it, but you need to get that one spot shored up.
Yeah, you sure do. Because to me, right there, that's a position that suffered. We talked about the linebackers being the weakest link. Cornerback position that needs a facelift. And I think Cam Curl, if he had stayed here under this group of coaches that they brought in, that I think his game would have excelled. But
Yeah.
you know what? He saw that he wanted to go on. I don't know if the Commanders really went after to signing him to keep him here. But I think that a lot of stuff has not been finished for this Commanders team, because we know that they're really active. So I know that cornerback is a position that they're going to look at. I meant to say this on the offensive side when we were talking about this. They better get some offensive linemen. I don't care who
Yes.
the quarterback is. They've got to get offensive linemen, a left tackle and a right tackle. They've got to get, and it's some great ones in the draft this year. This is one of the top draft classes for offensive linemen. So to
Yeah.
me, if you're looking at all those other positions we're talking about, the big one that has been Achilles heel for this team for years, offensive linemen.
Yeah, that left tackle position is a glaring need. Letting go Charles Leno, and then recently they had Tyron Smith as somebody who was maybe sniffing around, but he decided to go up to the New York Jets. So there's still an opening there. There's some guys out there on the free agency list. Jonah Williams out there with the Bengals. I don't think he's re-signed with anybody yet. Trent Brown is a guy that's out there. He's kind of been around on a couple of teams, and there was I can't remember the other cat. There's a couple of other players that are out there, right? And they may be a little bit older in age, but you mentioned it. This is a deep draft for tackles, and there's a lot of talent at that position. So whereas you don't have to get one of the top two guys, the guy out of Notre Dame or the guy out of the Penn State, there are other players that are available that can probably step in and be useful for you. But got to mention they did bring in Tyler Biadasz from Dallas, and they brought in Nick Allegretti from the Chiefs to play left guard. So you can say they got two other starters there. We'd love to see Andrew Wiley's play pick up, but don't overlook there being some sort of pressure brought in to make his game improve.
Definitely. And then in closing, as far as the defensive end position, that they brought in some guys, Dante Flowers. I knew this guy. I met him when he came into the league in 2015 with Jacksonville. He was sitting with me in the press box. He wasn't playing in that game. And for them, another acquaintance with Dan Quinn. I mean, from Florida to Atlanta to Dallas. This is a guy that still can make things happen. And then Cleveland Farrell, we met him today, and he's another guy that they brought in, Armstrong. So they brought in some guys, but I still think that they need a solid pass rusher. But they brought in some key pieces to that defense to go along with Payne and that group right there.
Yeah, I think that they have some, I won't say tricks up their sleeve, but Dan Quinn has been known to be creative with his defenders. He puts them in positions to be successful. I mean, if you look at how many different lineups Dallas had last year with defensive linemen and lining up in different spots, and shoot, it was a game to figure out where Micah Parsons was. So
Yeah.
I spoke about Frankie Lavu having the ability to get to the quarterback. Now, how is he going to be mixed into this defensive scheme? Dorrance Armstrong had a lot of production in that Dallas offense, and it's always good to have another Armstrong up there in burgundy and gold. So he's had production, whereas there weren't any splash signings. There's nothing up there that's like the Brian Burns and what's the young fella, Josh Allen out of Jacksonville. Those signings didn't happen. But you got guys at favorable prices at contracts that aren't too long, where they're going to be able to re-up if they're still playing at their top level. I think these are value picks. They're value plays, but they're going to pay off. That's the key. They're going to pay off, and you're still sitting at the top of the league with over $60 million in cap.
And also, you still got the NFL draft to come, where Adam Peters shows his muscles flexing even greater there. So It's a lot yet to be done for this Commanders team as they piece some key components in building this team. And they're building it, Anthony, of not trying to wait forever to get this team moving along the right direction. But Anthony, thanks for joining me. Always knowledgeable. Love talking to you because you've done your homework and you still keep connected. So you have to come back when I guess we invite Tony back.
I guess Tony can come on over here every
Oh,
night.
okay,
We'll give him
Tony,
5 or 10 minutes or something.
but as Tony said, we don't say goodbye. We say in the minutes.